Kevin, George, and Vernon met up every summer. They lived in different cities, but during the summer break, their parents took them to their grandmother's for a month. They had some time off from the city and ran around the village all day long. They were never bored. Every day, they managed to create new ways to entertain themselves. And that day, they wandered to the outskirts of the village and came across a garden that they had never seen before. It was clearly abandoned for quite a long time. It wasn't easy to get inside. The garden was surrounded by a high wooden fence covered with wild grapes. Vernon said delightedly, "This is cool. Let's climb in there." George looked at his friend cautiously. "Yes, it would be great, but the fence is too high." Vernon laughed. "Well, let's see who's the strongest and fastest. Whoever is the first behind the fence wins." Vernon and George ran up to the fence. They were having fun and laughing and tried to climb it. But it wasn't so easy. Old wooden pickets squeaked with every movement, and they were getting splinters. Kevin, on the other hand, was quietly watching his friends and inspecting the fence. Vernon turned to Kevin and asked, "What about you? Are you not joining us?" And then he added with a smile, "Oh, you're just afraid to lose." Kevin looked at his friend and said, "No, I'm in. Give me a second." Vernon shrugged his shoulders and started climbing the fence again. Kevin kept standing and studying the boards carefully. Suddenly, there was a dog on the road near the fence. Kevin was surprised. The dog was definitely not there a second ago. So this means she came from somewhere near. And that means... Kevin was thinking hard, and suddenly a thought struck him. He took a bun from his pocket his grandmother had given him in the morning and started luring the dog over. It was wagging his tail joyfully, and when it was very close, Kevin suddenly threw a bun over the fence. Friends looked at him with confusion. The dog took off and rushed along the fence. Kevin ran after her. A couple of seconds later, he disappeared in the bushes near the fence. Vernon and George got worried. But suddenly, on the other side of the fence, they heard Kevin's voice. "So whoever gets behind the fence first wins, right?" The boys climbed up a bit to look in the garden and saw Kevin standing next to the dog. Kevin laughed and pointed. A few feet away from the guys and overgrown with ivy, there was a small gate. The boys laughed and ran to the garden to catch up with their friend. No matter how difficult the task is, remember, do not rush to make a decision. Stop, look around, wait, and the decision might literally come running to you.
Imagine that there is a bank that credits $86,400 to your account every morning. But at the same time, there is a special condition. You can't accumulate anything in this bank. Its rules are as follows. If you don't use all the money you were paid in one day, then the remainder is simply written off, no matter how much money it is. What would you do if you suddenly found out that such a bank really existed? Of course you would try to win big. And what if you found out that such a bank already exists? Each of us has it. And this bank is called time. Each morning, fate gives each of us 86,400 seconds, which can be used as you like. but only until a new day comes. After all, every night, all the unused seconds are simply written off. They are gone forever. Because you couldn't use them to achieve your goals, they were wasted. This bank doesn't let you open a real account. This bank doesn't give credit. It creates a new account for you every day and destroys it every night, so that tomorrow it can repeat the process again. And if there are too many unused seconds in your account every evening, then their loss is only on your conscience. Time never turns back, and there is no means that can prevent tomorrow from coming. Remember that there can never be too much time. If it seems to you that there is, then hurry to look back and see what important things you are missing in your life. The way we use the seconds given to us depends only on us. After all, no one else can decide what to do with our lives. Every day, we decide for ourselves how to spend the precious time given to us by fate. And if you often don't have enough time for something really important, think about this, and just do it without delay, as soon as possible. After all, none of us knows how many seconds the time bank allocates for our lives.
An old man and a man of about 40 were in one hospital ward. The old man had a heart problem, and the other man was suspected of a fatal illness. The patients were tested, diagnosed, but most of the time they just lay in their beds and talked. The old man almost always smiled, even when it hurt in his chest. A smile appeared through the grimace of pain. The second man was always sad. He mentally buried himself and waited for the doctor to come in now and say how much he had left to live. The old man was often visited by his children, grandchildren, and distant relatives. Nobody came to the man. The old man asked why no one came to visit him, neither his wife nor children. Where will you find a good wife nowadays? Everyone only needs money. And it's a hassle with children. I want to live for myself. The old man chuckled and nodded. He told about his huge family, about the house, about the garden. The man replied that he wanted to build a house, but then fire can take it away from you. He said that his father left him a field, but he sold it because it needed to be looked after and guarded so that people didn't steal watermelons and melons. The old man just grinned again. He asked the man about his hobbies, but he just shrugged his shoulders and said nothing. My grandfather told me that he loves to travel very much. I have traveled to many countries. I remembered some adventures and how I jumped from a parachute several years ago. The man replied that he's afraid to travel because these are foreign countries, cultures, and skydiving is just dangerous. They fell silent. And after a while, the man confessed that he was afraid of death. He asked if the old man was afraid of it, because he had something to lose. He said no. Then the man asked to teach him how not to be afraid of death. You need to fear not death, but empty life, answered the grandfather. I had a long and interesting life, and I will not lose anything. Everything that I have will go to my family and friends. I have done many different things, both good and not so good. I was wrong, and I corrected my mistakes, but I lived. I lived for the benefit of myself and others. My life is not an example to follow, but it was definitely not empty. The man could not find an answer. He turned away from the old man, and tears ran down his cheeks. The next day, the doctor came. He smiled and asked for forgiveness. It turned out that the device was malfunctioning, and it didn't correctly diagnose the man's illness. His illness can be cured. The man was discharged from the hospital, and he went into the ward to say goodbye to the old man. He smiled, as always, and his grandchildren were sitting by his bed. "Thank you for the truth," the man said. The old man was surprised. "Now I know exactly what to be afraid of in life. I'm no longer young, but I want to live the rest of my life so as not to be afraid of death." They shook hands and said goodbye. Live as your heart tells you to, and fear nothing.